Yes, I want to see your gallery.
Oh my God. I think I am up to I don't even remember the number anymore. But I'll show you some of the pieces here. And also, this is the first time I'm actually, well, no, it's not. The last time I did a live with Rolling Out Magazine, I did show some of the items here. But let's go ahead and go over to that. So let's start at the beginning. This is actually a first edition textbook of your great-great-grandmother's. So that's cool. That was part of my collection. That actually was featured on Antique Roadshow. So this is the actual one that was on Antique Roadshow.
Right, that guy had no. How did $10,000? That was like ridiculous, but whatever. But that was your book, okay?
Well, no, it was somebody else's at first.
Oh,
but
okay, right.
That auction from that lady,
right?
And of course, it didn't go that high,
right?
But yeah, that's a whole other story. Now, I did when I went to Indianapolis, I did see that you guys had this on. I can't remember whether it was on display or not. Oh no! I think the one that you donated maybe to the Black Museum.
Right. I donated a version of this to the National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Yeah. So this is one that it's relatively completely preserved. It's
in great shape.
Great shape. So that's this is one of my prize pieces. I have all the pages, and it's almost in I would say very good plus condition. One thing that I wanted to ask you about is, are you familiar with this?
I have seen one of those. I may have one, but and I don't know who made it or what era it's from.
In the back of it, it's almost you can almost see the inscription, and I didn't put it. I meant to put that on here, but it seems like it's coming from Bastian Brothers also.
Oh,
so the ones that actually did these.
Okay. Oh, gotcha.
So there's only two sets that I've seen anywhere. One is your collection that's in Indianapolis. I saw one of them. I believe this is the one right here. I don't know if you can see me pointing at it.
So these are the two. I have actually about a half dozen of those gold badges.
Kidding. Which one? The one on the left or the right?
The one that has the ribbon.
The ribbon? Oh my gosh.
And I have one of the ones that just has the medallion.
Okay. So I have two of the ones on the left, just the medallion, which they said were, and this is the other one here. This was a lady named Doris Bethels. That was her.
That's nice.
So I have two of those. The other one you saw is blank.
And I don't know which one is first and which one is second. They're both really nice pieces.
I absolutely adore them. But literally on the OCLC, I only saw two in existence, and that's yours, I guess the Indianapolis one, and then the one in DC. So according to the books, we're the only ones that have it.
Gotcha. But amazingly, things show up. But
yeah, they do. They definitely do.
Stunning.
But until then, we can say that we have some experience. The next is this tin sign. This is one of my favorites. This is one of my favorites. Then also one of my rarest that's not product is this 1916 Capital Stock Campaign.
Oh, that is wonderful.
Yes, it's in as best condition as you can have right now. This is one of the only ones that is documented before her passing. So it's one of the few items that while she was still alive.
That's interesting. So and how many pages are in that? I haven't seen that particular thing.
20. It's about 20 pages.
All right. So you can, if you scan that, I would love to see it.
Yes, ma'am. Oh gosh, that's amazing. I have something that you don't have. That's really exciting. Then also, of course, I know you have this.
Right.
So that there, I'm trying to skip over stuff because I want to wait for shock value. So this is one of the things that you mentioned earlier, and I really wanted to put it up.
Oh, wow. That has the letters on it. So now I will tell you one of the things that I've learned, I think they got combs from many different places, but there was a Black woman named Louisa Cason, Cason, in Cincinnati, who seemed to have been her main supplier.
Okay. Well, this is, so do you have any of these in the collections? Because I didn't see either in Indy or in DC.
Yeah, you know, I have one comb that has Walker on it, but it's really on the handle and not like this, not in the metal.
So they said this is one of the earlier ones. So this is the back of it. So it says, you know, Madam Walker.
Oh, that's great. That's really a treasure.
Yeah, this is one of the earlier ones here.
That's
so
a treasure.
On the opposite side.
That's great.
Then we have, this is just a few, and I actually took that out with me. So I have a bunch here with me, and then a lot of these on here, so it could be a lot better visual. But these are a lot of the pieces that I have here of the actual product themselves.
That's great. And you have the full range of them, you know, and I love the one that's down on the right, where her hair, which is really the original photograph from the original ads and from, you know, sort of circa 19. Yeah. And I do, you know, and clearly the other ones that an artist did the sort of straighter hair and that I think, as you know, the skin brightener, those are things that came after her death, when the advertising manager was a very light-skinned man who, and then you could see the ads changing from her image to a sort of more European-looking image. And then there was a distributor named Kiefer Stewart, that was the name of the company, who the Walker Company was having do some of their national distribution, and they repped a lot of companies, white and Black companies. And I think that because there were already these sort of these skin bleaches, that was like, we know the Walker brand is a respected brand. So that's when this tan off that makes me cringe every time I think about it was developed. But that was after she died.
Right. Okay. So for people that don't know, can we let them know what the actual first products were? Just so they're aware. So you have the hair and scalp conditioner, hair and scalp preparation was originally the Wonderful Hair Grower, but they had to stop calling it Wonderful Hair Grower. The FDA made them stop calling it that. So that was the original one, right? So they became hair and scalp preparation. Okay.
And then Glossine was the ointment that was used for pressing hair. Then there was another sort of higher strength version of Wonderful Hair Grower called Tetter Salve. And Tetter was kind of an old-fashioned name for, there you go, old-fashioned name for dandruff.
Right.
And then there was a vegetable shampoo that was more like a cake shampoo. Right. And then there's one other, that Temple Salve, which was again another stronger strength, but it was 5 original products.
Gotcha. So yeah, I have pretty much all of them except for I thought I had the Temple one, but I guess I don't. Oh, you know what it was? So there's 2 things that I usually do when I'm actually doing exhibits. And I want to do that really quickly so that people can see it. I did this on one of the other programs that I was on. So the Temple Growers. Is that the one that you just said?
Yeah, Temple Salve.
Yeah, I knew I had it. That's what I was saying to myself. I was like, wait, I had that. So the cool part. So this is one of her top or one of her original products. What a lot of people have never seen before. And I don't know if you've seen them together, but this is how I make the example between the 2 products. This is Poros here. This is Temple Grower. And then, okay, let me put them.
Right. And I can't see them that well, but I'll look at it after we are off the air. Very similar, right? Exactly.
So this is that. Now the interesting part is what I tell people is, you know, let's back up real quick, because that will set the stage for, and actually let's go full screen again real quick. This will set the stage for the whole controversy between Annie Malone and Madam C.J. Walker. Now, it said that Madam Walker stole Annie Malone's recipe. Now I presented this situation with some friends, and I said, well, the story that I heard, and actually I saw it from Joyner. Oh man, her name escapes me.
So Marjorie Joyner, or was it in $2 and a Dream, where Peg is really talking about Denver and
yes,
the pharmacist. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that was the official story that I heard. That was the official story, probably the oldest one that I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds kind of accurate. And I think you also talked about it in your book as well. Mm-hmm. So most people don't know that. Well, actually, I'll let you tell it. When you tell the story about Denver and the pharmacist and how that
right. So here's the deal. So as just to also put in perspective, as I have done this research now literally for 40 years, mm-hmm. What I discovered is that this formula, which was basically an ointment like Vaseline, right. Mm-hmm. and had sulfur as the medicinal agent, mm-hmm. it had been around for centuries. Mm-hmm. This was something that was used to heal scalp infections, skin infections, etc. Mm-hmm. So Annie Malone, all of these women, Madam Walker, Annie Malone, Elizabeth Arden, Helena Rubinstein, all had these magical formulas that came to them in dreams or that they concocted. But I think that's part of the beauty industry, is that people have magic formulas, mm-hmm. And they have origin stories.
Right.
So Annie Malone made a big deal about Madam Walker stealing her formula. Mm. But Annie Malone was not the first person to have this formula. It had been around a very long time, for centuries. It was in medical textbooks. It was in pharmaceutical formulas. So, but Madam Walker, as Sarah Breedlove, when she first moved to St. Louis, her brothers were barbers. Mm-hmm. So she first learned about hair care and the hair care industry from her brothers. But she was a Malone agent, and Malone probably taught her some things mm-hmm. about growing hair. Right. When she moved to Denver, she was still selling Malone's products. Mm-hmm. She also was working for a pharmacist. And as Peg, and I'm forgetting Peg's last name as well. Mm-hmm. Peg's mother and Madam Walker were good friends. Peg right. worked for the Walker Company for many years. Mm-hmm. And her story is that Schultz, the pharmacist, saw that Sarah was selling these products on the side, mm-hmm. and he had other products on his shelf that were very similar. And he said, you can make your own products, and you can tweak this and you can do that. And it was not a very complicated formula. So it's like if you have a sweet potato pie recipe and your mm-hmm. cousin has a sweet potato pie recipe and you put some other stuff in it, did you steal it? Well, I don't know. Were you the first person to make the sweet potato pie? No.
Right. I got it.
So, but something happened, and I don't know exactly what right. that made the women fall out with each other.
And that's the hard part. That was really the hard part. Now, the conversation I've had with people, and they ask me, they're like, so what exactly is that stealing? And I said to them and myself, I said, well, being that we have a relationship, that we're working together, if I feel like I want to step out from you or from under your tutelage or whatever, and I have the formula analyzed and don't necessarily tell you that I'm leaving or that I'm trying to do it, that because of the relationship, it does make it, mm-hmm. a little weird. So that's how I kind of say it. But also the other thing that sets it apart, and this is setting it up for the pieces that I'm about to show you, is that if she did steal it by way of not disclosing that she was mm-hmm. going to be stepping out, the one thing that we have to say is that people that we take under our tutelage, that we are mentors to, we always have hopes that they will exceed us in what they do and will go above and beyond what we've given them the basis for. And I feel like that was what this situation was. She took what she knew that was great and she made it better. And in this instance, she also was a marketing genius. Mm-hmm. She was a phenomenal person when it came to that. And that was one of the things that made her products stand apart. Now, do you know why she chose the color choice? Do you know why?
I don't.
That? Okay.
I don't.
So one of the things I have people analyze when they do see the product. So let me do it like this so I can actually see that you. So this is Annie Malone's. It's almost the same, layout of your great grandmother's, but it's plain. It's very bland. It's very wordy. Okay. Now, what I tell to the kids is I'm like, okay, so what do you spot the difference here? One, you see the color. First thing she did was made it vibrant. That was a great marketing choice in itself.
That maybe that was CJ. Maybe that was his marketing,
Yeah, for the early.
If we were writing the script, we could say that.
Right. So that was one of the things. And they could, that literally they could have been sitting there like, okay, well, what can we do? Had the twos next to each other. But that was one of the major things that stood apart from them. Although the layout is very similar, hers is less wordy. The stuff your grandmother's is less wordy. It's bigger, the writing, and then it's colorful. So, those are the little observations I have the children to actually look at when they're looking at this, so they can start, just deducting stuff from it.
That's an interesting way. That's a great lesson. And when you say the marketing genius, it was, I think people say, why is Madam Walker more well remembered than Malone?
Yes.
And there are a lot of reasons, because really both were giants.
Yeah.
And they both have made really important contributions. But here are a few of my theories on that.
Okay.
And this was actually Betty Collier Thomas, who's a history professor who was at Temple for many years and who ran the Mary McLeod Bethune home in DC for years, did an exhibit on Madam Walker and Annie Malone in like 1984.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She had things from comparing the two. And her theory was, part of the reason is Madam Walker died at the height of her fame in 1919. She had just built this mansion in New York. It was in the New York Times. She was being written about, and Annie Malone lived another 4 decades.
Right.
And went through a lot of difficulty where Madam Walker divorced CJ when he started acting up. Aaron Malone, she married him in 1914 after she had already been in business. He came in and really tried to undermine her and really, mentally abused her in a sense and turned her agents against her. Right. The divorce was very difficult. She had tax problems. She didn't want to pay the taxes. F.B. Ransom made sure Madam Walker paid her taxes to the penny.
Yeah.
He kept really close records. Annie Malone had an ongoing lawsuit with a worker, one of her partners, actually, who she had promised a certain portion of her profits in 1913. That lawsuit lasted for decades.
20 years, 20 or more years.
Yeah, I mean, it was still not settled in the 30s. I mean, it was still, when she finally sold the property in St. Louis. And then I think one of the other, Madam Walker was a great, beautiful building built in 1918. Yeah. And then Madam Walker was traveled all the time. And she didn't, I think where Aaron Malone was kind of pushing Annie to the side, she wanted to let him be the leader, and he was running for office and trying to be involved in the National Negro Business League. So he was hampering her a bit. But then I think the other piece of it is that A'Lelia Walker, who was, bored and frustrated in Pittsburgh, had New York as her territory and said we should have a presence in Harlem, and persuaded her mother that they should have a building in Harlem in 1913. And I think that gave them a bigger platform. Yeah. If they'd stayed in Indianapolis, then people wouldn't have known about them. And then I do think that these two National Historic Landmarks, the building in Indianapolis and the mansion in Irvington, have contributed to people. There's some tangible evidence.
Right. Definitely. And I think that's major. And I actually had the opportunity in February during my Black History Month tour. I actually went up to and I didn't even think to put them in that the box here, but I went to actually the gravesite of both your great grandmother and your great grandmother.
Right.
It took me forever.
At Woodlawn.
Yes, it took me forever to find that. That is a massive cemetery, and everybody and their mother and father is buried in there as well, black and also, you know, historically white. But massive. I want to say it's something ridiculous, like it's over 100 acres. I can't remember.
It's a beautiful place.
400, but I don't remember.
And it's a great place to learn history, Black history, as well as American history.
I did not realize so many major Harlem Renaissance and also jazz artists, Black musicians in general, were also in there. So that leads me to believe that that's the where our elite Blacks were all buried from, that lived in New York at least. So I visited their
a lot of people are Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. There are a lot of folks who are buried there too.
Okay,
but yes, it was a place to be buried.
Oh, definitely, that place it's actually really, I can't even put into words. Like, one, I got lost. I literally spent probably an hour and a half trying to find them, because the signs and locations really aren't that pronounced. So it was very hard, but I found them. So I visited them there, and then I also went up to Irvington and I got to see the actual house.
Great.
For me, it was something always that I imagined from all the pieces that I have. I've always felt connected to your great-great-grandmother, and just learning the history and being a part. You know, I felt like I was a part of it just by preserving the history itself through the physical items. And going to the house, though, it was so much more than I imagined from the pictures. Like, seeing it and then imagining myself back then, it's still a sight for sore eyes now. But then it had to be absolutely amazing for this to be the only Black person in this area, for the house to be as amazing as it. I didn't even get to see it, the inside, of course. So I just got to see the outside and go around the back, where a lot of the famous portraits are taken of all the agents and everything. It felt like I went back in time. And
it's a magical house. It really is.
It is. Just from the outside, seeing the outside. I can't even imagine. Once it's open, I hope they add a museum component to that for the think tank. I just think, yeah, that place, I'm so glad that it's back in our hands. Well, even though the person they bought it from were Black, they were Black.
Right.
But I'm just glad it's back in hands that are going to be able to do something with it publicly and allow it to be a place of vision and inspiration that people actually can go to. Do you know if they're going to have a museum component?
Well, you know, the village of Irvington is not really zoning things for public, you know, I mean, that's a whole nother thing. But there's enough inside the house. There's none of the original furniture or anything, but there's enough in the house that there are spaces where you can have, you can have displays. And certainly a lot of the things that I have that are three-dimensional things will will end up being in the house. So, Richelieu Dennis, who is as people know, the founding CEO of Sundial Brands, makers of Shea Moisture and Nubian Heritage, also makers of MCJW, the line of Walker hair care products. And of course, Rich, the company was sold to Unilever a couple of years ago, which, sort of made some people freak out. But, I don't think they understood his model. His model was that you take some of those proceeds and you buy essence. And then you create $100 million venture capital fund for women of color entrepreneurs, and you still have some involvement. And then you do philanthropy, and then you create a foundation that buys Villa Lawaro. So he is a visionary, and he understands Madam Walker's legacy and truly appreciates it. So I feel very fortunate that I have a partnership with them.
Quick, there's a piece that I wanted to show you. Now, most people don't completely understand. Your great grandmother was May.
Right. My grandmother. So Madam Walker's my great-great-grandmother. Her daughter, Alelia, who I'm named after, is my great-grandmother, but Alelia Walker adopted my grandmother, May.
Yes.
And the two women had known May's uncle when they lived in St. Louis. And when Madam Walker moved to Indianapolis, May's grandmother lived right across the street from Madam Walker. And so they, you ask, who are your people? And they discovered that they had this connection. And May's father had recently died when Madam Walker arrived in Indianapolis. So that's how they met each other.
Gotcha. Well, this is a 1938 diploma and signed by your grandmother. Let's zoom in.
Because Alelia Walker died in 1931.
Right.
So May at
at this time,
president of the company.
So just wanted to show that, and I'm sure you have a bunch of these.
Well, that I actually have just one of those because there was another. There's an earlier diploma, but I have when I see that writing, that printing, I do have one that that I got. I don't know where I got it, but there must have been somebody they hired to do the lettering on each of these diplomas. So I don't know who that was, but somebody had a job with calligraphy.
Right. Yeah, definitely somebody was employed for sure.
Right.
For the amount that they had to put out. So this is one cool one there that I actually have. I'm working on acquiring another one. So when we talk again, hopefully I'll have that. Let's go on. Have you ever seen one of these?
No, that's interesting. No, I mean, that's lovely. Now, what year is that? That's 1939. That's interesting. So let's see. The Walker Beauty School. So that was when they did have something on 125th Street. The Alelian girls. No, I've never seen that. That's great.
All right. I'm glad I can show you some stuff. That's exciting. Of course, I showed you those already. Actually, while I'm showing you some of these, can you address whether for the scene in the movie where the agents are protesting outside, was that accurate?
So there was a protest. It didn't happen exactly the way that you see it in the film, but Madam Walker had her first convention of sales agents in 1917, so 2 years before Mary Kay was born. And at that convention, the women sent a telegram to President Woodrow Wilson urging him to support legislation to make lynching a federal crime. When she had her second convention in 1918, they were in the middle of the war. There were all kinds of issues of getting the tin cans shipped and, because it was wartime. And she was trying to figure out how to not raise the price and how to have other distribution. So in fact, she was talking about how she could have her products, some of the gloss, I think the glossine in retail stores. And the agents were very unhappy about it and they protested and they, said that they were not, I don't know that they were going to strike, but they said they did not like that idea. And there's correspondence between Madam Walker and F.B. Ransom with him telling her, you're going to have to figure something out. And so she did say to them in her speech in 1918, I'm trying not to raise the price. I'm really trying to make this work. But she then backed off from that. She listened to them. So it wasn't the kind of, protest with placards, but that I didn't mind, in the film, because sometimes you have to illustrate things.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just wondering. I was like, because I don't know if it would have been as peaceful as it would have been, like, in that white neighborhood.
Yeah, right.
So, but did that take place on the property, or was that
no? Her convention was in Chicago.
Okay.
So it's the big the sort of public event at Villa Lawaro. She didn't move into Villa Lawaro until August of 1918, which was after the convention.
Okay.
So that wouldn't have happened. She didn't have a convention at Villa Lawaro. Villa Lawaro was strictly her residence and not a business place.
Okay.
The opening party in August of 1918 was to honor Emmett Scott, who had been Booker T. Washington's secretary, but kind of chief of staff.
Right.
And at that point was the Secretary of War for Negro Affairs.
Okay.
during the World War I, and that was a big, sort of big dinner and concert and that kind of thing.
Okay. Now, is that when she hosted him at the house?
Emmett
Or
Scott. No, so Booker T. Washington was dead by that point, because remember, he dies in 1915.
Right.
I know you know that. But she had, when he came to Indianapolis for the dedication of the YMCA, the Black YMCA, to which she had contributed $1,000. That was after their confrontation at the National Negro Business League convention, which I would have used her real words at which I thought were really strong. That's not what they did.
Right.
But yes, they had words and a confrontation, and then he began to gain respect for her. And when he came for the dedication, she sent her chauffeur to pick him up at the train station. He was a guest in her home, and during the convention, he said as he was thanking her on the stage, if we don't watch out, the women will outstrip us. But that was kind of a different thing from, I don't want the women to do better than we do. It was a different kind of backhanded compliment, but it wasn't you must not outstrip us. It was, well, we can see these women are formidable.
Right.
So it was more a compliment than it was a threat.
Right. Also, I feel like it was a challenge to the guys for them to step up. That's how I took it. Reading that line from her, and I was just like, from him, excuse me. That
I have to raise this thing. So there's the Shamari Wills's book, Black Fortunes.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what he was thinking, because he portrays that scene as if it is something really negative for Madam Walker.
Right.
But I don't know any other historian who's ever read the original documents on that who comes to that conclusion. Yeah. So I wasn't sure what his agenda was with that book.
That's very interesting, because that was one of the things that I came to when it came to the certain things about the movie. It seemed like it was agenda driven. And like I said, of course, we already know that it didn't stick to your book, your masterpiece of a book that literally laid the groundwork for whatever they wanted to cover. But getting into now, because I know we have to wrap it up, getting into, I really want to know what your thoughts were and accuracy, because I know you're working on another book right now. And I hope plug that at the end so we can make sure people are looking for that so they can get all the books. And also, the other book is in there. What's the name of the book that has the theater on the cover?
Oh, Madam Walker Legacy Center.
Yes.
I think all you can see
get that book.
If I move this way, here it is.
Yes. Please go to her website if you want to see photos. Please support her directly. Go to her website and buy it. You can get it on Amazon if you want to, but I suggest we support her directly by going to her website and purchase it directly through her.
You can, but you will get a crickle from website, because I am the fulfillment department, and I'm going to the post office once a week.
Me too. I totally understand. I'm doing the same exact thing. So yes,
but yes, I appreciate it whichever way you do it.
That way.
But AleliaBundles.com is my website, and we also have MadamCJWalker.com. So please visit the website anyway and sign up for the newsletter.
Can you cover about the depiction of Alelia Walker?
Sure. She's really, the character in the movie is really very unlike the real Alelia Walker. There is the mother-daughter relationship is really important and something that needs to be a part of any story. But the Esther character is made up. There was no relationship with a girlfriend. This seemed to be created in a way to either appeal to an LGBT audience and to have a character, which would be fine with me, because a lot of Alelia Walker's friends were queer. That's not an issue for me, but that didn't happen in real life. And it was created to have conflict between mother and daughter, when in fact the real life conflict was Alelia's two boyfriends, both doctors, both handsome, who Madam Walker didn't trust, and the other who she adored. So that's great drama. But that would have been two more characters. But that was a decision they made. But I think that Alelia Walker has been written about even by scholars whose work I really admire, but who hadn't done original primary source research and who haven't had the benefit of this 30 years of researching her that I have, who kind of caricature her and make her, Madam Walker spent the money, Madam Walker made the money, Alelia Walker spent the money, she had parties, the end. And as I say, nobody is that pathetic.
Right.
In fact, as I have developed this book, I've discovered she is a major patron of the arts. She traveled internationally. She ran the New York office. Now, she was not as driven as her mother. There's no question about that. She was trying to live up to an impossible standard that her mother had set. And so there's that drama. But I really want to see her portrayed in a much more serious, much more nuanced way.
Definitely. And just to make it clear, or actually to make the question a little bit clearer, was she a lesbian? Because that was
listen, you know what? There's no proof. Now, people were very circumspect. A lot of her friends were queer, and during the Harlem Renaissance, a lot of people were doing a lot of experimentation. She was married 3 times. I know that the second husband was the love of her life. But many of her friends were gay. And when she died, she had a very close female friend who was a longtime friend, but I don't have any letters. I don't have any documentation, so I can't say for sure. But as I'm writing this book, I am trying to put 2 and 2 together and seeing what I come up with. But, as you write things, I think people want me to say definitively, yes, this is true. No, this isn't true. But I think anybody who writes books and who does the level of research that I do, sometimes it takes you a while to work through, to find out what does the evidence show. And so I'm really working with the evidence. Right.
And the reason why I asked that direct question is because a lot of people don't understand that a lot of creative licenses, to say it nicely, a lot of creative licenses was taken to put this series together. And my issue with that situation, there is no definitive proof. Even a lot of the jazz and blues legends that were around during the time that partied with them at her, her homes, the Dark Tower, all of that, they've never said anything or insinuated anything about her sexuality. It was always a thing of, it was a free-spirited party. So everybody was there, whether they had an alternative lifestyle or whether they were heterosexual. So it included everybody. She was never exclusive or excluding anybody, which also lended her to being such a safe haven for a lot of the creativity to happen during that time period. So I wanted to ask that question specifically, but also to show that a lot of the stuff that people are saying as definitive is not, you can't support it. There's nothing that actually can tell us that information.
And people there was just such a different time. When in the 1980s, I was really fortunate to be able to interview some of her friends. And her circle of friends was quite varied. And Bruce Nugent, who many people who have studied queer history in the Harlem Renaissance, I spent a lot of time with, and Bruce would never tell me one way or the other. But he also said, Bruce was married, but he also enjoyed men. And he said it was just, people didn't feel the need to declare. So that sort of the way that she was portrayed in the film, and sort of really open displays of affection and in front of her mother, that was very, very unlikely, and especially with her.
Right. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention briefly was the issue with that composite stuff added into her character. It bothered me because they did bring in W.E.B. Du Bois. They brought in, I forgot who else they brought in, Booker T. Washington. But what could have been a great opportunity to introduce some of her friends, like County Cullen or Langston Hughes. They could have had those characters in there to have that representation. That's why I said it seemed like some certain things were included that didn't necessarily fit. So that's why.
Well, and with that, it's interesting because obviously, so Madam Walker dies in 1919. In the film, she's still alive. So all of those things didn't happen until the 20s. but I think they wanted to have the Dark Tower scene in there, and so they kind of conflated those things. But those folks weren't around until later. But that's fine because I want to do a separate separate series.
Yeah, and that would be great.
We have time for those people.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm looking forward to that. So is there anything else that you would like to cover? I'm just going to show you one piece real quick, and then that will be the end of this here. Have you ever seen this before?
Yes, I do have that, and that's a really great piece to have. And at the bottom, it has the addresses of the various beauty schools. So that's that's after Madam Walker dies, but it gives you a sense of where the schools are.
Presence was absolutely. Now, are you aware of the salon here in Atlanta?
I am. So Reese DeForest, his uncle and maybe father, or maybe two uncles, worked at the National Park Service and were very much involved in historic preservation and are in part responsible for Villa Lawaro being a National Historic Landmark.
Really? Okay.
During 1976, when there were one or two Black historic sites, they took it upon themselves to add several. And for the bicentennial, and Villa Lawaro was one of them. So he has a connection that goes beyond that. And then, but I've actually never been in the salon, but I, have seen pictures and I've talked with him. So I'm very aware of the really important work he's doing.
Because him and I are partnering up because, he has the building. I have a lot of the artifacts.
Oh, so great.
We're talking about partnering up on a lot of these things here. So that's fantastic.
Wonderful.
I definitely want to thank you for taking the time out to have this conversation with me. Like, this was the best launch of this series that I'm doing called Candid Conversations. And I'm really, really so happy to share that time with you. Thank you for spending this time with me. But also, please let everybody know what you have coming up. Plug the book again, your upcoming book, and give us any timeline for that if you can.
Sure. And thank you very much for putting the websites up there. I appreciate that. AleliaBundles.com and MadamCJWalker.com. Sign up for my newsletter. Buy the edition Self-Made is a new edition of On Her Own Ground, for which I've written a new epilogue and made a few corrections because anybody who writes a 293-page book makes a couple of errors, and so I've tried to correct those. I am almost finished with the first major biography of Alelia Walker called The Joy Goddess of Harlem, which will be published by Scribner next year. And I'm, learning how to do IG Live and Facebook Live. So I'm doing some of those every week.
That is awesome. So thank you so much for your time and dedication to our history. Thank you for sharing this time with us and making a lot of the things that were unclear very clear for us. So I really appreciate you. I look forward to doing another one with you once you have your new book out. And anytime you want to just jump on and we can go over some of the artifacts and everything. And again, just thank you.
Thank you. And the wonderful work you're doing with preservation is just so very important. Thank you
so much. I really appreciate it. Well, guys, you guys have had an amazing treat with this amazing biographer of one of our greatest ancestors and just pioneering women when it comes to entrepreneurship. So thank you, Ms. Bundles. Guys, make sure you follow her. Also, what are your social media handles so they can go follow you?
I'm at Alelia Bundles. So at ALELIA Bundles on Twitter and Instagram. And then I have Alelia Bundles, an author page on Facebook.
Awesome. We got a lot of comments. I didn't even know these were on here. So let's throw these on here so that you can see some of the great comments from a lot of our viewers here. So they are really appreciating you for coming.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much.
This is so neat. So yes, I will definitely give you information on this so you can go ahead and add this to your repertoire here.
Great.
And, we'll definitely stay in contact. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks a lot. All Good night.
Good night. Thank you all for viewing. Thank you all for being a part of this inaugural Candid Conversations. Tomorrow, actually, we'll be back on. And tomorrow we have Miss Christine Swanson. She is the director of the Clark Sisters biopic on Lifetime. So tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 1 p.m. Standard. So again, come back on tomorrow, 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be on with the director of the Clark Sisters movie. So thank you again, guys. I really appreciate you for joining me, and we'll definitely see each other tomorrow. Take care. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to leave a comment so we know what you think about the episode. Also, please, 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 please make sure you click the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the awesome content that we're going to be uploading. Thanks again for the support. See you soon.